couple years ago, I got a phone call from a potential client. He'd been referred to me by another person in his circle. And he called me up, and he was a facilities manager for a large local institution. And he called and he said, Landon, I've got a problem, and I was told that you might be able to help me fix it. And I said, all right, no problem. I hope I can. Maybe I can. I don't know. Maybe I can't. But tell me what your problem is. We'll see if I've got a solution. He said, well, look, he said, a couple years ago, I had a little bit of extra money in my budget, and I went and I hired a vendor to come in and scan the third floor of our hospital. He said, and they scanned the whole floor. He said, I didn't have enough money to scan the entire hospital, but I figured if I could get a little bit of money in my budget every year, I said I could scan a little bit of the hospital. And eventually we want to get a building information system. We're going to use the point cloud data from the scanning to do that. And I said, that's great. That's a great approach. Makes it a little more affordable for your organization instead of doing everything at once. I said, well, so what's the problem? He says, well, the next year, I had a little more money in the budget, and I wanted to get this next floor done, get the second floor scanned. He said, but the first vendor was out of business already, so I hired a different vendor, and they came in and they scanned the second floor, and he said they finished their work a couple months ago. He says, the problem I have is nobody can get the first scan of the third floor to fit together with the scans from the second floor. So he says, I can't get the third floor point cloud and the second floor point cloud together, stacked on top of each other in the right location. And I said, yeah, that's a bummer. I said, the vendor that did your second floor scans, they can't help you do that, huh? They said, they don't know how to do. They have no clue how to do that. I said, okay. I said, well, it's not a super insurmountable problem, and we should be able to help you, figure that out. I said, we got to get in the building. We got to do a little bit of surveying inside of your building. We got to tie some features on each floor, but then we should be able to match those up with your scans, and we'll be able to get you guys a point cloud that fits together like it should. So that had a happy ending, but it was it's a sad story, and it's going to be repeated over and over again, across the United States as we move into this world where more and more organizations are creating building information models or doing what we call digital twins, and scanning is an important part of that. So it's going to continue to happen. I'm sure I will continue to get those phone calls. So why is this happening? So I'm going to give you 5 reasons why this happens. So if you're a client, you don't want to do these things, right? You don't want to be in this situation. So here's the 5 reasons it happens. The number one reason is technology has lowered the barrier to entry. So if you got a new iPhone, it has some built-in LiDAR. You can acquire point clouds with your $1,200 iPhone. There's other handheld units that are relatively inexpensive. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to use those, and for very limited projects that are very limited in scope and size, they may be a good affordable solution. So that's one thing that's happened. It used to be 10 years ago or 15 years ago, if you wanted to get a point cloud, you had to be a surveyor and you had to know how to run a scanner, an actual scanning instrument that got set up on a traditional survey tripod. You don't have to do that anymore. Okay, so that's one reason this happens. The second reason is BIM, building information modeling, has a really bad tendency to be priced by the square foot. I get solicited all the time by usually overseas modeling companies that want to sell me BIM models by the square foot. So if you've watched my other videos, you know how I feel about pricing stuff, professional services with unit costs like that. It usually doesn't end well, right? You're gonna get what you pay for. So I think that's part of it. You get people that are trying to acquire these Scan-to-Bim services on a price per square foot model, and they get low quality. The third reason is clients don't know what questions to ask. So your typical facilities manager, building manager, when they go to hire these vendors, they don't know what questions to ask. They don't know, they don't know how to spec the work out. They don't know how to make sure that the deliverable they're going to get is going to meet their long-term goals. So that's a problem. A fourth reason this happens is just hype. I think scanning and BIM and digital twins just get overhyped. It's never as easy as the salesman tells you. The guy that's selling you the software, that's selling you the handheld scanner, or that's selling you the BIM model price per square foot. All those people are going to tell you it's easier than it actually is. And so it just gets overhyped, and the building manager, the facilities manager ends up being stuck trying to make all these pieces work, and that can be frustrating. And then finally, the last reason is most of these BIM folks are not land surveyors. They're not, and that causes problems. They don't have some of the key knowledge that land surveyors have that you need to make these Scan-to-Bim projects work at scale, across a hospital campus or a university campus. So, and we'll talk about that some more in a different video. So, how then do you do a Scan-to-Bim project the right way? How do you do that? Well, I'm going to give you 5 things you want to do. 5 things that you want to do for your next Scan-to-Bim project. Number 1, hire a land surveyor. Right? You need to find out if your professional service provider that's going to do your scanning has a licensed land surveyor. If the answer to that question is no, be very afraid. Okay? And we'll talk about that in some other videos, but that's the best thing you can do, is hire a team with a licensed land surveyor. Second thing you can do, explain your objectives, not just your short-term objectives, but your long-term objectives. This is really valuable data that can be used beyond just one project, so you want to think that way, and you want to have a conversation with your service provider about that. The third thing you want to do is you want to set permanent survey control. Most BIM folks do not understand how to do that. So a land surveyor will understand how to do that, and you're going to want to work with your land surveyor to get some good permanent survey control on your site. Okay, so that's going to be important. You want to make sure that your land surveyor is working in what we call a defined coordinate reference system. So they've got a map projection and a known horizontal and vertical datum, and that's defined somewhere, and you know that future service providers can utilize that same coordinate reference system, so that's important. A good surveyor can explain that and show you how to do it, help you do it. And then finally, the last thing is you want to make sure that all of the scanning work you do on your campus or in your building is tied to that permanent survey control that we talked about. So those are the 5 things. If you can do those 5 things, your Scan-to-Bim projects will be done the right way. Again, hire a land surveyor, explain your objectives, set permanent survey control, work in a defined coordinate reference system, and make sure all your scans are tied to that survey control. So I will work with Lori, our content marketing specialist, and Brian, our partner that is in charge of our scanning work. And we'll do some more videos. We'll talk about what makes BIM folks different from land surveyors, and what are some, why do you want to have a land surveyor involved in your long-term Scan-to-Bim project? How do you develop a specification for your organization when it comes to Scan-to-Bim? We'll walk you through some of that. We'll also teach you what questions you need to ask if you're going to go hire Scan-to-Bim work. What are some questions you need to ask your service provider or your vendor? We will walk you through all that. We'll show you some examples. So we just finished a project over in Fernley, Nevada. We were able to go in and do Scan-to-Bim right, the right way for the client. We set permanent control. We surveyed inside and outside of the building. Everything fit together. Any future work they're going to do is going to be tied to that same control network. It's a beautiful thing when you see it done right, and there are clients that you can work with that will understand and pay for that. You want to be one of those clients. So don't be cheap. Make sure you get a surveyor involved, and your Scan-to-Bim project will turn out much better if you do that.